My presentation was on funerary art in the Florentine Renaissance as seen through the Church of Santa Croce in Florence. So the rationale behind the subject divided the categories into three questions. One was around social status and burial custom. The other was the movement from a Gothic to a classicist style. And the third was how the idea of chivalry or knighthood evolved as kind of parallel to this changing sense of design in the movement from Gothic to Renaissance art. So there's a question by George Bataille that's posed in his Encyclopedia Acephalika in his section on pottery, and it's a question to archaeologists. And he says, archaeologists and aesthetes are interested in the container and not in what it contains. And I thought this was a really good framing question for my entire project, since we're looking not necessarily at the art specifically of the tomb, but in the use of the tomb, the social function of the tomb, the burial customs surrounding it, and what these means as a relation to the art, not just art in of itself. So I think it's a really interesting question that helps frame the discussion. So we begin with the monuments, and I've separated the monuments into three distinct categories, kind of based on time. We start with our four main monuments, which we call late Gothic to early Renaissance. Then we move into our monumental monuments, which feature actual visual reliefs or figures on sarcophagi, which is the middle Renaissance. And then finally, we have the high Renaissance or early Baroque, which is the period from around 1560 to 1610, exemplified by figures like Vasari and his thoughts. So we begin with the Gothic tombs. We begin with the tomb slab of Biordo degli Ubertini, which is in the main basilical floor on the south transept, and it's made of white Carrara marble. It depicts Biordo of Ubertini, a soldier of great distinction in war, and it really exemplifies the Gothic style. It is the first example of a tomb slab funerary form in Santa Croce. It's the earliest example they have, and it's particularly unique in its depiction of a fake baldachin canopy, as well as a relief ballataio, which frame the honorary subject and reinforce its Gothic motifs. It showcases an origin point for this kind of funerary art in medieval Florence, with its distinct representation of chivalrous honor or office, and the importance of social rank of the mortuary subject, that being the knight in the center of the picture. And Butterfield notes in his infamous essay that the majority of property-holding Florentines were buried in sepulchres of this sort, though none kind of as complex and as wonderful as Ubertini's. And here is a quote to consider from Butterfield's essay. Next up, we have the tomb slab of Bartolomeo Valori, and this was fashioned by Lorenzo Ghiberti in 1427, and it is nel mezzo, or in the middle of the left of the crux on the Santa Croce. It's made of white Carrara marble, and it depicts a famous Florentine citizen, Bartolomeus Nicolai Taldi Valoris. He was a distinct member of the Automates class in Florence. Its significance is interesting because it moves on from our previous tomb slab. It's a crucial midpoint between medieval and Renaissance funerary art in Florence, and it's described by some as the first true Florentine Renaissance tomb. It displays a more refined execution of form, detail, and figure, and it innovates in some surprising ways, namely the elimination of inscriptionary tabernacle and the new allowance for the perspective of the viewer. So now we have our brother tombs, beginning with the Baroncelli monument, which is dated from 1328 to 1330 by Giovanni da Belgiuccio. It's in the Bardi di Milano chapel in the north transept, and it's made of a variety of materials. It's noted for its Gothic allegorical acanthus decoration and its Pisan influence. And we also have the tomb of Guattarotto de' Bardi. This is attributed to Agnolo da Ventura around 1337. The fresco backsplash is most likely by Giotto in his execution of the Bardi Chapel. It's made of marble of Siena, and it's wonderful in its depiction of heraldic and human forms in the bottom of the Avello in repetition. It's a more advanced version of the Avello or wall tomb form that we previously saw. So we consider these two tombs as brothers of the same form, the Avello or the wall tomb as mentioned, which comes from tomb, literally in Latin, labellum, small bowl or basin. Basin for bones, maybe. It represents a social shift from the simple tomb slab. Whereas tomb slabs and previously built simple wall tombs were designated for individuals, all known extant Avelli contain familial remains. As a result, art historians have deduced that these monuments emerged as the socially acceptable choice for the noble families of Florence. So we have some major era insights for our first era, namely the development of Renaissance themes, the emergence of the Avello tomb, and finally, the importance of Florentine chivalry. So now we move into the Middle Renaissance tombs. We begin with the monument to Leonardo Bruni, which was made around 1446 to 1450 AD by Bernardo Rossellino. It's on the main basilical floor on the south side, and it has a wonderful Latin description where it says, "Since Leonardo has left this lie, history literally weeps and eloquence is struck dumb," and it goes on and so forth. And the significance of this tomb is really astonishing. It's the first monument to a layperson in Florence, a regular public citizen or a public office. As a work, it marks three important movements: the artistic movement away from Gothic styles and towards a codified Renaissance ethos, a new social status for public servants, where honor is no longer just reserved for the nobility, but also for servants of the Republic, and the movement towards an artistic connection between Florentine chivalry and a Roman or classical past. Zora notes in her essay on the monuments of Bruni that it established the format of a single arched tomb derived from the example of ancient Roman monuments. Now we have the dialogue tomb, or the brother tomb, designed by Settignano in around 1440 to 1430, and it's the tomb of Carlo Marzupini. It's a state-commissioned monument, and the construction was conducted under the patronage of the Medici and Martelli families. Its significance is in that it tries to create a dialogue with the previous tomb. Settignano directly sought to establish this dialogue between the monuments while improving on the faults of the former. Marzupini's tomb kind of creates a greater shift around honor and chivalry in the Florentine Republic, away from ancient landed families and towards a more egalitarian and humanist perspective. It kind of solidifies the beginnings of this movement that the previous tomb signaled. It reinforces the motif of vestigial representation, an honor previously only reserved for clergy and high nobility. Settignano uses, quote, greater animation and a proliferation of details, almost to the point where it overwhelms the entire monument. It is a civic monument with a moral function. So our major era insights for the Middle Renaissance era are the consolidation of Renaissance themes into this solidified ethos, the humanist expansion of chivalric honor, and the revival of the Arca-Solia model. So finally, we move into the late Renaissance. And we see our one case tomb for this period, which is the monumental tomb of Michelangelo Buonarroti. It's designed by a variety of members, including Vasari, Battista Lorenzi, Joly, Bandini, and it was completed around 1564 to 1576. It's made of white Carrara marble and polychrome marble. It has a wonderful wall painting backsplash, and its significance is really in that it was the first monument in Santa Croce monumentalizing an artist of the public. It served as a collaborative project between the greatest artists of the Accademia delle Arti del Disegno, which was an institution specifically set up by the leaders of the Florentine Republic, namely the Medici family at the time. As a result, this monument kind of serves as a sort of summary or resume of Renaissance design trends, which makes the monument not only for the glorification of an individual, that of Michelangelo, but of the humanist culture of Florence at the time. The construction was ordered by Cosimo I of Medici, and it serves to glorify not only Michelangelo, but the greatness of Florentine art and design under Medici rule. It is, quote, a manifesto of the Design Academy. So, main conclusions are these. Firstly, the shift from Gothic expression to a Renaissance expression, especially in depictions of human form, was led by experimentation in funerary art and its development. The movement from tomb slab to ovello in Arca-Solia represents a development of new ideals, namely the desire of the nobility and state to connect Florentine knighthood to a Roman chivalry. And thirdly, these changes in the design and aesthetic of death arose from the reform of the Florentine optimates, which expanded the knighthood to lay people, demonstrating the new societal respect and honor to thinkers in the early and middle Renaissance.